All right, welcome back to our next collecting track panel. This is our third one of the day, and this is one of my favorite topics. I'll introduce the speakers shortly, but it's on weird, wild, and whimsical Star Wars collectibles. So this, for many of us who've been collecting a long time, this is a fun area. There's a lot of really cool, obscure, and weird stuff, and we got some of the world's experts on that kind of stuff. And so I want to introduce our panelists: Joe Iglesias, Bill Cable, Todd Chamberlain, and Yehuda Kleinman.
Okay, so I'm Bill Cable. Start by saying that my primary focus on collecting is C-3POs. So you'll see a few C-3PO things among my slides.
So Todd Chamberlain, I would say I'm a pretty comprehensive collector. I've collected for a long time, so collect a lot of different production things, but to me, one of the reasons that this area appeals to me is the idea of not freeing yourself to not be a completist, to just say, one-off things that maybe, like this banner up here that I've only ever seen one of. I have no idea why it exists, but it's fun, and I don't care if there are hundreds or thousands of them out there, or if there are more in the series. It's just to buy things that appeal to me because they're interesting for themselves.
Hi, I'm Yehuda. I'm an unfocused collector, and I don't mind things being incomplete or actually in poor condition. I just like something cool that catches my eye, and that's why this is a fun panel. And so it doesn't matter where it's from, and throughout the years we all collected different sets, and we always felt the OCD need to make sure you have the eighth piece on that set. It's sort of cool when you can start saying, okay, I'll just have 2 or 3 of this strange thing that we don't even know all the pieces of. And Star Wars was such a phenomenon that it really took over the whole world. And even in places where things weren't available, all kinds of companies were bootlegging different types of items. And there were also licenses given out to all companies to make all kinds of things so far beyond the Kenner lines. And so we'll be talking about a few of those things.
And I'm Joe Iglesias. I focus mostly on bootlegs, knockoffs, strange, unlicensed products from around the world. I like kind of seeing just how far companies would go to get a piece of money from that galaxy far, far away. It's definitely taken my collection some strange turns, which you will see some of those turns today. Hope you enjoy them.
We're going to see the first of them right now.
Yes, this is a lovely soap and brush set from 1977. Very early knockoff item. The C-3PO is a little more dead on. The R2 kind of looks more like a bullet than an R2, but great piece, very tough to find. I've only ever seen 3 of them, so it's a good piece to hunt for.
Next up, this is the official Star Wars movie poster from Poland from 1978. And you can see that the Polish are wise in this decision, picking the biggest star of the entire trilogy to focus as the only character they really cared about for the movie poster.
Well, Anthony Daniels is the one who actually sold the movie to Poland, and he explained his role.
This is an unlicensed oil lamp from the late 70s, and to me, one of the odder things about this is to think, who really was using oil lamps? Was that a product that people were looking for? But, you got to find some way. Someone had a stock of oil lamps and was trying to sell them, and they put a Star Wars image on them, because these are around. If it's not a one-off piece, it was a production item sold in some capacity.
And for our next adventure, we're going back to Poland for a lovely silver-haired, red-caped Princess Leia. I have examples of her on the card, as well as loose, and one without her cape in a slightly different white plastic. A lot of this stuff was made because the licensed product was not legally available there, and a lot of times I think it was painted by people that had never seen the movies before, because some of their choice in colors, are as bizarre as they are, but it also keeps it really fun to see just how many different variations you can find.
And this is an assortment of 1983 era keychains. I'm not sure, Joe, if you know if these were carnival kind of pieces. I've picked these up from a couple different places. If you can't tell, the square pieces are actually slide puzzles. So those things where you move around and jumble it up.
The slide puzzles usually end up being found in little 5 and dime stores when 5 and dime stores still existed. That was more the 70s, version of a dollar store now.
Okay.
I love the giant arms on the Jabba the Hutt.
He's been working out.
Now we're going to go a little bit more in focus or in depth on this next section of slides with Yehuda.
Switch places.
Yeah, you want to do that? Okay.
That worked out.
Try not to kill myself.
So I tried to go a little bit more into depth on a couple of things, and my whole collection is weird, and so it was easy to find that. So I'm going to talk about, first part is Mardi Gras doubloons, and Mardi Gras is a cool event that happens every year in New Orleans, and it really is a fun party. It's a party town for anybody who's from New Orleans, and one of the things that's done is premiums and things are thrown from the different parades. So the parades are held with different groups and clubs, just like we have, and they all make their own swag and throw it at the parties. And one of the things that's coveted are the doubloons, and they're made by the Osborne Coinage Company often, which is the same company that made the Power of the Force line coins. So sort of really cool, and it really demonstrates what they put on their coins, which often reflects what is popular in time. And so it's very pop culture, these coins. And when Star Wars came out in '77, about a year or so later, you started seeing the Mardi Gras coins have Star Wars symbolism on them because that was what was popular. And you'll also see them in some coins where the whole theme is Star Wars, but in many coins where Star Wars is just one of the things that's going on in the '70s. So if you can see that first coin over here, this is an interesting one. This dates back to 1979, one of the earliest coins, and you can already see an X-Wing at the 3 o'clock position on the reverse of the coin. And you'll also see Mickey Mouse on this one, so it's sort of cool that this first coin already had some foreshadowing as to the future ownership. And then you get all kinds of crazy mix-ups. You might see King Kong or something else. Next coin is really probably my favorite coin, maybe my favorite coin out of all Star Wars coins. And this one really came in 5 different color variations, and it's really beautiful artwork. You can see the X-Wing escaping from the Death Star, and it's done very artistically. And typical Mardi Gras coin colors, besides the white and gold that we're all familiar with, are gold, green, and purple, because those are the colors of New Orleans and the colors of Mardi Gras. But they'll also throw in other interesting variations. So if you love variations, this is a great collecting path to take. And so these 5 make a really interesting set. This is more typical of the ones and in the 80s, Mardi Gras doubloons were really at their height in collectability. And so it really started in the 1960s, and a guy named Alvin Sharp started it, and he made the first coins. And after that, by the time it built up in the 70s, it was really catching on. Well, by the 80s, everybody was making coins in all kinds of variations and all kinds of comical ones, many ones that are satirical. So this is cool. You see a lot of Star Trek and Star Wars stuff mixed together, which is cool. You see Yoda right there in a little bit of a cartoonish appearance. R2-D2 is also noted to the left. And I think that's the Starship Enterprise at 3 o'clock peeking out behind Yoda's ear. So that's cool. This is 1986, and those are the typical 3 classic Mardi Gras coins in coloring. And the next set's really cool. This is, again, around 1986, and again, you're going to see where they really started doing some crazy stuff with these. So here's Optimus Prime, and Yoda's at 3 o'clock, and there's, of course, the Enterprise, because they always throw in an Enterprise. And often there'll be themes at Mardi Gras, and every now and then the theme is space fantasies. And so when those come, there's always some cool Star Wars stuff. And the ones that are actually thrown from the floats or given out by people walking around and handing them out are typically the aluminum coins. And then there are also specialty coins that are given just to club members behind. So those are also fun to get, and they can be made out of precious metals. You'll see the top row is the typical stuff that you would find if you were at the parade and lucky enough to catch these. And on the bottom, you'll see a solid brass one, which was done in oxidized brass. Typically, some are done in shiny metals, but typically they oxidize the precious metals. So you see an oxidized brass one. That next one's a sterling silver one, also oxidized. And these are the bigger, they're given between members of the clubs and at their meeting, usually after the parties. And then there's some wild ones that are enameled, and you can see the colored one over there as well. So yes, it's a pretty big rabbit hole. That's what I got from Mardi Gras coins. Next slide.
All right, so many of you may have seen these ceramic the actual ceramic lamps, and these are not licensed item, but As someone who's been collecting continuously since the 70s, really, I just like to find, I like it when I continue to find things that surprise me. And so this is something where, again, I've seen a bunch of these lamps over time, but about, I don't know, 6 or 7 years, I came across the actual, all it is just the parts for the lights, but it has this cool packaging, because usually, there's no packaging for the ceramic lamps. And so again, this was, what was fun for me on this was just like, something new that I haven't seen before.
Yeah, speaking of things that most people haven't seen before, this is a Mexican hybrid between an X-Wing and an Eagle 1 from Space 1999. It's incredibly rare boxed. If you want to go to the next panel, there's what a loose one looks like. It's, really a, twisted morphing of both products. Great piece. Comes with battery packet. I've never put batteries in to see what it does. I'm kind of frightened to see what happens. So if someone, that has one wants to do it and tell me, I'll just stand back and let them tell me what's going on with it. But it's a great piece, just strange as it gets.
So Joe is not the only person who collects bootlegs up here. I'd like to pick up C-3PO bootlegs from time to time. This is one of my more recent pickups. It's a Lego bootleg, and you can see there's another regular size C-3PO next to it to tell you how big it is compared to the normal one. Click again. And you can see, not only does he come with a spear, because C-3PO needs a spear to defend himself, he comes with a Prismatic Poe Dameron trading card within the package. And the weirdest thing about it is the head is sculpted, custom sculpted. They didn't use anything to blow it up, and it looks like it's the color of a Cheeto. It's horribly mismatched from the rest of the figure.
So it's hard to convey from this picture, but this is like a stormtrooper head pushed into something that you might find in your backyard if you owned a dog. And I'll just leave it at that.
Nice.
Okay, in the early 80s, the Sigma Corporation got the license to produce ceramics for Star Wars products. And they really went off the rails on a lot of their designs. This is a picture frame, and this is actually, I think, the most creative one in terms of using C-3PO's predicament from Empire Strikes Back in a product like this, that the broken up parts are around the frame. But really like that one. Next up, this is a pencil tray. It's a pencil tray, and I actually got it signed by
Sultry
Anthony Daniels.
3PO.
But I call this the Vanna White pose for C-3PO. It's far and away the most effeminate depiction of C-3PO I've ever seen.
No, it gets worse, man.
Speaking of.
And of course, we have the C-3PO tape dispenser where you pull the tape out from between his knees. I like to use yellow electrical tape instead of the clear cellophane tape because it just is that much more fitting whenever you're...
That much more disturbing.
Exactly. I go for disturbing as often as I can.
We know, Bill.
And the final piece, this is from the legendary scene from Empire Strikes Back where C-3PO manned the turret to take the AT-ATs on and defend the generator. And we all know that C-3PO succeeded there and the rebels were victorious. And Sigma loved that scene so much that they decided to make it into a music box. This is one of those lamps, like Todd was showing before. This is the actual ceramic lamp bootleg.
And I guess just a note on that, because this is a question that comes up a lot, that people, these were that were called like whiteware items. So essentially, you would go into a craft store and you would get just a white ceramic thing, and then people would finish them on their own. And so there are endless variations of each one of the ones that were made, because it's basically some individual person that took it home and made it up.
The whiteware stuff is fun, and if you're really into collecting early stuff made by fans that are different, you really get some crazy paint jobs, and they can look really great on a shelf mixed together. And also, always different. Every single one's individual. This is one of the wild pieces. So, huh? No, this is not. But that's a cool set too. This is actually an unproduced Bespin World set for 3 3/4-inch figures. And this is a prototype that was found in the Kenner main building in a closet when they were closing up, and it was allowed to be taken. And this set was made around 1997, so it's a really interesting, wild piece. We found out some history about it throughout time, but essentially it was conceptual. And to see, sort of like the barge was conceptual initially, can we make a piece that big? And so they were thinking in that direction earlier on. And so we have a set here. This is all a mock-up set, and it's handmade out of different types of pieces. You'll see styrene, wood, plastic, a lot of pieces from other sets. You'll see Millennium Falcon guns. You'll see stickers from the Imperial Shuttle. And you'll notice the figures are from 1996, which is when the time that this was mocked up, and those stormtroopers and the hand carbonite came with that set. And so here's some close-up details of some of the interesting parts. What you'll see here is an elevator chute, which also may double as a carbonite chamber. I'm not sure what all the thoughts were for all the different sculpting, but it does go up and down, and it is a pretty cool piece, and that tower goes all the way up, and it has multiple attachments, which there may have been extra pieces. I'd once spoken to Gus about it, and he had seen it earlier, and he remembers it being bigger. But on the top, you can see a crow's nest, and it sort of reminds you of different scenes from different parts of the movies, especially those sticks sticking out over there remind you of the bottom of Cloud City when Luke is hanging on. And so over here you see some more pictures. Those are the original figures that they were using during the mock-up, and so they drilled holes into the elevator, and they would put these little pegs on the bottom of the figure's feet to hold them in place for the presentation. Next slide's really interesting. They actually had working mechanics on this thing, so that tube raises up, and if you look closely, you'll notice that that's actually a large hypodermic needle, and that's what they use to make the mechanism work. And so as you lift that up, it drops down, and you'll see the drop door go down, and also those cannons, which are actually Millennium Falcon cannons, spin in with a spring mechanism that's located on the bottom. So it's a lot of interesting engineering, which makes this piece very cool. And what they were going to do with it ultimately, we don't know. It also came with this other piece that you could put on top with cannons, and so it was really a conceptual piece, the type of thing that they would take out, put on the table and say, can we make this, and if not, how can we modify it? What did follow later, a couple of years later, was the piece that was a fan club exclusive, which was a Bespin freeze chamber, and I think that's what they compromised on in the end. And this was built in Cincinnati, but that one was already over in Rhode Island after they moved. So it's a cool piece.
And this is an early set of apparel, overalls, Liberty trousers, made a denim material that was made into, you could buy denim shorts, denim pants, these overalls. They also made short overalls. So I just put pictures of two different ones here. I like the fact that what stands out for me is that they made this brown style. I mean, usually most of the Star Wars stuff comes in a lot of blues from that era, and so I don't know, this is the Tatooine kind of themed version of the denim pants. Oh yeah, here's the shorts. And this is an arm sling.
I need that, dude.
This is a relatively recent piece, and I can't read from here what it said. It's basically a Japanese-produced wooden model of C-3PO, and it came in sets of 5 for the most part, but they also sold some individual ones, so I'm really happy I found an individual one with the box with the writing on it. I think that really adds to the piece. But it's just like a solid piece of wood that somebody painted.
And imagine getting pulled over by this ominous character. This is a Chinese-made, U.S.-sold piece from the early 90s. It speaks for itself in its cheesiness. It's bump-and-go action. I've actually put batteries in that thing and ran it around the house. It's great. It's a hilarious toy. Don't see those every day.
So I'm going to talk a little bit about a pretty whimsical collectible. These are Yuppies. Yuppies were made by a company called Productus Yuppies. They were in Colombia, South America. And this is pretty much one of the only products that came out during the vintage era. And the company was known for actually having licensed toys, premiums, given along with their candy packets. they actually cycled through pretty much every cool 60s, 70s, and 80s kid genre, including Hanna-Barbera and the A-Team and GoBots and Transformers. I don't think they had Transformers. And they had pretty much everything out there. So at one point, they actually got the license from Lucasfilm. And every single one of these figures has an LFL on it. It's a set of 40 figures. And each figure comes in multiple colors. And so it's a challenging set to get. What makes this miniature set unique and really awesome is they're all individually sculpted monoarticular multicolored figures, which were all based off the Kenner sculpts. So when you put them side by side next to some of the Kenner figures, it's pretty cool to make the comparisons. And they're also extremely rare. So when I first started collecting these, many of them weren't even known yet, and now they've become a little bit more popular. There's more word of them out there, but there's still, some of the colors are not even known, and many examples are only in single digits. What you see here is some examples of the UB figures. You can look over here and see that you can get different color Vaders, a pink Boba Fett, and the line was made sort of late 80s, so you'll see that the Power of the Force, R2-D2 has a lightsaber popping up out of it. If you look closely at the Darth Vaders, you'll see that the lightsaber actually goes into his hand, just like the Kenner figure. And when you look at them closer and closer, you start to notice that you're seeing figures that are really Kenner-based. And the line goes all the way from the first 12 figures, including Vader, and going all the way down to Kia Mall and figures in the droids and Ewoks lines. And here you'll see a variation in color of Kia Mall. This is a set that belongs to Tommy Garvey. It's only missing the green. And you could see a Yoda, R5-D4, and a Chewbacca, even with his little silly Kenner weapon, which is not a crossbow by any means. Now, if you actually compare them side by side, they look like that. And then you really see it. And you can see the cape folded in, and you can see that they're definitely, somebody just went into the shop and said, okay, what figures are available? And they took anything, and they're random. I mean, there's no Luke Skywalker, but, you know, there's plenty of Ewoks. Years later, I found a copy of a board. So these were meant to be used for this particular set as a game. And actually, if you collect them all, and you can use them as game pieces. So that's sort of cool. Looking back at the whole set, you can see when you put them together in multiple colors, they display very nice. On the bottom row, you can see an FX7 with his big claw coming out. You'll see other features that really strike you as Kenner. You look at the 21B as well. You see the sand person all the way at the end in pink, and he's holding his Kenner weapon. And even Klaatu up there in green is clearly a Kenner copy. You see low gray as well. And if you look at the Death Squad commander on the third shelf in pink and red, he looks like a first 12 figure. So really fun to go for. There's an EV-99 standing sideways over there. He's the tallest one.
Okay, so next up is this very dangerous C-3PO item. If you could click to the next slide, please.
Boom.
You can see it's a Sommelier's knife. It's part of a wine set that was sold in the UK. And so if you want to attack somebody with a C-3PO collectible, this is probably your best option. And years after I got the production one, I got an email from Ross Cuddy. He's like, would you be interested in the pre-production the C-3PO? Because he found the guy who had a full set of the pre-production ones. So the one on the left is a completely different sculpt. They sent to Lucasfilm for approval, and obviously Lucasfilm had a lot of markups for improvements. But there you go.
All right, now we're going over to Spain for some Airgam. Airgam was a line that was very similar to Play Kid and Adventure People, and they seem to really like Greedo. As you can see in this first pack, we have a Greedo in a 3-pack. And next slide. Then we have him individually carded, and on the next slide, we even have him in box. They're always red, except for the one from their Super Diaboliques line, which is green and very angry looking. And even better yet, someone bootlegged that in Greece. They decided to put Greedo on steroids. You can go to the next line. Some close-ups of what he looks like. His head's way too small for his body, but it's just a brilliant piece.
So this is I don't know, it's an Australian beanbag chair. I'll leave it at that. And this is just part of a fun line of prismatic belt buckles from the late 70s. There's about, I think, 5 or 6 different in the set.
And next up, we have Darth Vader and Superman hanging out in a 2-pack from made in China, sold throughout Europe and the U.S. The typical flea market toy, blow-molded, cheap, and lots of fun.
This is an unlicensed change purse. It's about that big.
It's a
just like
it is a disco purse.
disco purse.
It is marketed as a disco purse.
But it's basically like 2 flaps of fabric that fold together, and I've seen a few different colors, but they always have the gold C-3PO pin on them whenever they show up on my eBay searches. I don't know if there are other ones out there.
Yeah, they're gold and silver are the ones I see usually.
And we're going back to some early U.S. stuff now. This is Marzon. It's an inflatable hybrid between a Darth Vader and a Stormtrooper. There's also a silver version that looks more like a Cylon, but it's a ridiculous piece. Lots of fun for everybody. And up next we have Greek cards. This is a 200 card set, and they didn't exactly stick with just Star Wars, even though it's a Star Wars set. As you can see, we have a few things that don't belong here. There are also prize cards, which I think I forgot to send to the slide, where you could bring it back to the store and they'd give you prizes. The toughest card is card number 200. That's the one you could hand in to get a free bicycle, which is why you never seem to find that card. It's a very tough set. There's large and small text available on them. It's a really great card set. If you collect Star Wars cards, it's definitely one of the toughest sets that you'll be able to try to put together, which makes it even more fun. I don't like collecting to be easy. I definitely like a challenge, and this set is a wonderful challenge.
And I guess kind of following up on that point about tough versus easy, I guess to me, for any given collecting area, if you're going to collect an area, an ideal area is one in which there are both easy and hard pieces. Like it's no fun in my mind to collect something where everything in the line is hard to find or expensive. And again, hard to find does not always equate with it being expensive.
The Greek cards are very inexpensive overall compared to some other things, and you can still put together a nice run of them without needing to do a full set and still have some really cool looking cards.
So just as a general
breaking
kind
the
of
bank.
advice about, like, if you're thinking about getting into different areas, I try to think about, like, how much am I going to be able to stay engaged in this? Because if it's something that's so easy, I can go on eBay and in this given area, I can finish them all in a week and I'm done. Well, but to think
that's
about,
boring.
yeah, like to think about, okay, are there both easy pieces that keep it interesting and kind of keep me going over time, but also some things that are challenging and long-term goals for it.
Agreed.
So what screams the late 70s and early 80s more than tube socks? So that right there is a set of C-3PO tube socks. I actually got this from Todd a while back. And it's just printed on the side as a C-3PO's face, and it's a green and yellow. So beautiful colors that you want to wear all the way up your calves and walk around in your shorts back then. But that's not all. It goes even farther. How about some C-3PO dress socks? These are the thin material that you would normally associate with dress socks, and it has the same exact C-3PO image on it. They'd put C-3PO on anything.
Well, and so I'll say the socks are one of my favorite, clothing in general is one of my favorite areas to collect, and this to me is an example of, it's fairly easy to find, if you want just an example of some Star Wars socks, but there are, we're still counting how many different variations there are in terms of different characters, different color variations, and so I probably have 40 or 50 different pairs of socks, and I know that I'm missing some, but I don't care that it's not complete, but there's something that has been able to kind of sustain me in that area for over a long period of time.
Do you buy used socks or only new socks?
I'll buy used socks if they're, a decent image on them. Yeah, sure.
I'll keep my eyes out for you, brother.
All right, now we go back to Spain for a Target game that has some characters that we're very familiar with. I actually just recently got the boxed version of that. I didn't even know it came boxed until one popped out of nowhere on eBay and went into one of my 80 different searches I do to try and find different knockoff stuff as it gets harder and harder throughout the years. But out of package, it's a great looking piece. Next slide. Has some characters that we know a little too familiar. If you want to go to the next slide. It's got an R2, and if you want to go back to this previous slide, it also has a Dalek right next to the R2, which, I don't know how you ended up in there, but it's got some X-Wings. Next slide over. Yeah, it's got some X-Wings on the background. Really great looking art, beautiful presentation piece, and not very expensive. Just, you got to wait for one to come up more than anything.
So this is a piece I picked up recently off of eBay. It was listed on eBay as a prototype blow-up C-3PO. And whenever I talked to the guy, I was like, oh, how is it different? And he said, oh, it came in a box that said prototype. So I was like, oh, that's awesome. So I bid on it. It went pretty reasonably priced. I get it, and I receive it in the mail, I open it up, and it's just the C-3PO blow-up in the box. I was like, man, you told me there was a box that said prototype. He's like, no, it was sold as a prototype, but he shipped me the box that was supposed to say prototype as the shipping container. So I was a bit disappointed by that, but it's still kind of a cool piece. I know you see these at Lowe's all the time, but one interesting thing.
Whimsical.
It's very whimsical, yes. And also, you always see him at holiday time, so a lot of times he'll have like a Santa hat or a present in his hands or be with R2-D2 or something, but I don't know that I've ever seen a retail one that's just the C-3PO by himself. Mm-hmm. So there's a very good chance that this was a non-released piece.
And now we're going to Japan for some fun stuff. We have a stuffed TIE fighter here. There's also an X-Wing in the line, which I don't have, or else I'd love to have photos of that for this. But it's another, just strange, oddball piece that comes up from time to time that had to end up in my collection. And going into more oddball stuff from Japan, there's a model maker called Imal. They make tons of models for just about everything you could possibly think of. They had a line called Star Command. As you can see, there's different soldier characters that are kind of R2 shaped, with a strange floating Vader head in the background. They also did some as World War II soldiers. They did a US, a German, and a Japanese soldier, which are just absolutely politically incorrect by today's standards, but they're part of the line. I guess that in Japan they don't view Germany the way we view Germany, and they put them out with, all kinds of crazy stuff on the packaging, but they're really strange. There's 16 in the line. Very difficult line to complete. I'm still 3 down from a full set of them. And I'm sure if you have a friend in Japan, have them hunt you down some because they're great pieces.
So this piece is a C-3PO airplane. So if you've collected every other possible thing with C-3PO on it, the next thing you get are aircraft. This is just a scale model. It's not an actual airplane. Though the actual airplane does exist, you can see it out on the show floor.
Start saving the money, Bill.
No, not the plane itself. You can see pictures of it out on the show floor.
So again, the idea of being surprised. I bought a lot off eBay that was $5 school supply, just a mix of modern and junk stuff, and this was just mixed in there. This is a late 70s unopened bag of Charleston Chew, O. Henry candy bars from Canada with a Star Wars offer on it. And in food collecting, they advise usually to taking the food stuff out, but I just cannot bring myself to open this thing up. It is, yeah.
Yeah, don't open it.
And with tax season in full swing, the most feared villain for all of us. But this is an Uze carded Imperial gunner. And the card art is absolutely brilliant. This is, one of the favorite pieces in my collection. I have pieces that are far more expensive, far rarer. But this is the piece that started me down the dark path of collecting knockoff Star Wars toys. It's everyone's favorite piece. And thank you all very much.
So we do have time for some questions. I have no idea what the procedure is for asking the questions.
The C-3PO Inflatable that was the right?
Yeah.
That wasn't released in America. It's a 5-piece set. There actually currently is one on Amazon for $650 for the 5-piece set, but you got R2-D2 has a bottle opener, Yoda has a cork topper, and Vader has a corkscrew.
Yep.
Vader's corkscrew was actually, they reused the mold for like Kurt Adler, but plastic a few years ago. And did the same thing.
Yeah, I was aware that it was part of a set. That's whenever we got the prototypes. He had the prototype set of the
You said it was 4 premium.
Well, it was released in the UK by our UK distributor.
Say again?
Which crews were throwing the
Oh,
Mardi?
all different crews do. And sometimes what they'll have is they'll have a science fiction theme for the year. So everybody does their own thing. If you want to read a little bit more about it, I have an article on the archive. Just type in Google search the THESWCA and then anything Star Wars and you'll find it. But it's THESWCA Mardi Gras doubloons. And I have everything listed, including every crew, including every known variant. And so, yeah, it's a rabbit hole. It's a fun one, you know. And also I have an article on the Yuppie stuff as well. So if you want to check those out, you can see all the different variations, things like that.
Good? Price range on some of the stuff.
Yeah, especially the bootleg items. It's such a niche market that it's really.
Like which piece specifically?
I mean, I'd say, it could be as low as $5 for certain bootleg things, and it could be $5,000 for certain.
Yeah,
I mean,
literally
it is a pretty wide range.
I literally showed pieces that I paid $20 for, and pieces that in today's market would probably cost $10,000 or $12,000. Just among the bootleg pieces I was talking about.
Like what would the gunner go for?
A gunner in today's market, anywhere from depending on condition of the bubble, anywhere from 8 to 14.
1,000, yeah.
But they do vary in value. Mardi Gras doubloons are between $5 and $10. And I will tell you something else. You know, what's really nice about not collecting mint on card, Kenner, early bird stuffs, is that there's plenty of things out there that are really cool that nobody's looking after that are not only inexpensive, but fun and quirky and different. And you can
And undocumented.
and undocumented. And the fun is that we love documenting it and then putting it together in the archive. You'll have all these different articles written by by many people, and they describe all the different fun things. And all of a sudden, you might get a spark in you either of nostalgia or just interest that you'll see something and you'll say, that's what I want to collect. And all of a sudden, your eBay searches will have 30 things. Each of them will be under $10. But you can go in all directions. You know, I collect Uze prototypes too. In fact, that amazing set that I have, that Bespin set I got from my friend over here, Joe, years ago. And you know, I collect bootleg stuff too, and I have things that are worth a lot more. But the obscure stuff, some of the fun stuff, is some of the cheapest stuff, and it's rare. And some of it's so rare you can search for it forever.
Sure, go ahead. Yeah.
Earlier in the talk, you had said one of the things you had to learn was to let go, especially if it's an item where there's a one-off. Was there a particular item you remember seeing for the first time that made you realize that I have to let this go?
I don't know I've been collecting. I have not stopped collecting since the items were in the toys in the 80s. But for anyone who has collected for a long time, if you remember like the 1701 series Star Trek figures, it astonished me that I knew people who collected Star Trek figures who stopped collecting Star Trek figures because they could not get those 1701 figures. And I would just say that, so part of it is there's a collecting mindset. And to me, it's not a critique. That is just, some people want to have everything. But I just remember being, for myself, well, I definitely have had that collect all, mentality in terms of the action figures. When I was in high school, I was still chasing the figures and wanting to put together a set of figures, but it took me, until the early 90s to get a complete set of carded figures. And I think there's some degree of learning to some discipline, I guess, and some mental gymnastics of trying to change your parameters of what your collecting universe is and what is your checklist. Because to me, it's a very frustrating world to live in if you feel like I can't collect if I can't have all of X. Because the fact is, there are very few things. I mean, trading card sets and things like that, where you can say like definitively this is the set. And to me, it's just a lot more fun to say, you know what, I'm going to decide. I'm not going to let the world decide what is complete. I'm going to set for myself the parameters of this is my collection. And and that might be there are 132 cards in a trading card set, but the fact is I only want the 10 that I really like. And that I don't need to have all of them because that's what was made and that's what it was meant to be. It's just collect what you like.
Todd said it perfectly. And to go along that path, for any of you who've ever completed a set that you've worked on, right afterwards there's this downside, like what do I do? Do I start collecting like chocolate wrappers or something? And so you don't know what to do. So when you don't chase it and you just say, I like that piece, and sometimes it'll sit there and it'll make you say, I want another piece. And you can move them together in your collection and really make them harmonious, and it's not hard to do. And then all of a sudden collecting becomes fun, and I go down to the floor and I'm not looking for anything. And if something catches my eye, that's it. And I don't have to make me buy something else.
I would say, just again, because it's a thing that's passionate to me as someone who's done this for a long time, that is, I've seen a lot of people come and go in this hobby, and people leave for many reasons, but I would say that a very common theme of people leaving is the idea of their frustration that they can't complete some preconceived idea of what they want their collection to be. And again, that's a personal choice, but to say that there are people who, I think if they could have just thought about things differently, they could have stayed and enjoyed and had a good time. But it is a common pattern. If you're thinking about longevity in the hobby, to think about kind of what are the things that make me frustrated, and that maybe part of what is getting you frustrated is you're just setting unrealistic expectations of what you're trying to kind of conform to some norm of what a collection should be. It's like, I can't have this, piece that's worth $10,000, and so I don't want to do this at all. That's not fun to me.
It's a very valid way. It's a very important way.
Yeah, I think Joe could speak from the other side as somebody who has to have everything.
Well, the fun thing about collecting what I collect is there is no quote-unquote checklist. There is no finite amount of things. I still find unlicensed vintage product that I never knew existed. I've picked up half a dozen pieces at this show that I had no idea existed before I got here. And that's the beauty of it. I've been collecting bootlegs since '94, and I picked up my first couple of knockoff pieces. And I'm still finding new stuff. That's what keeps it interesting. That's what keeps it fun. That's what keeps me still driven to keep, collecting it, and to keep finding and documenting more stuff that is out there. Because there's such an infinite amount of it that there's no way I'll ever be finished. Yeah, I might have a full set of this particular carded figure or that, line as far as the, what's known to exist beyond variations. But there's still oddball and weird stuff that I've never seen before that I look forward to adding to my collection at some point in time. And this gentleman's had his hand up for a while.
For each one of you guys, is there a grail piece that one of you guys have obtained or something out there that you are still looking for?
Yes, actually. Well, I did recently obtain a Grail piece, and if you come to the Grail Stories panel on Sunday, you can hear all about it.
I'll be there too.
Yehuda will be there too. In terms of things that I'm still looking for, I'm trying to put together a complete run of C-3POs on every Kenner card back. The only one that I've never found is a Return of the Jedi C-3PO with the Anakin sticker offer on it. So if you happen to find one of those, look me up. And
if anybody has one, he'll pay ridiculous money for it, just so you guys know.
There's always a danger of listing grails in front of big groups of people, because then it turns up, and people want, but
Bill will pay that. So if you find it,
Poor Bill's bank account.
I only need one kidney, right?
in terms of an actual set that I would like to complete, the drawing board greeting card series they made between 77 and 83. that the two hardest cards in my experience to find from that run are they made a Mother's Day card and a Father's Day card in 78. And I have the Father's Day card. I have missed like one or two of those Mother's Day cards. But again, I wouldn't, when I find that card, I don't expect that it should cost me more than $10 to $15. I mean, there are many other things. That's one where I can think of like definitively. But there are many things in my collection where, again, I know that I am missing it, but I would expect that when I find it, that it's not going to be that expensive.
And as everyone looks towards me, I recently attained a piece I've been looking for over 20 years. It was a one-off piece. It's a mock-up card back for an Uze Hoth Trooper on a completely different card than what was released. And I, had put out feelers and been searching high and low for it for many years. And earlier last year, a dealer I'm friends with found out who had it. We worked out the deal, and I flew down to pick it up in November, and it's finally, where, in my opinion, it belongs. As far as current grails, I can't think of anything that I've been hunting for that long that I definitely know exists. There's some stuff that I know was made that no examples have been have turned up for that I would love to own and definitely would put on that pedestal. And when they do come up, I'm sure I'll be paying out the wazoo for them, but I'll do what I can to make sure I can get them. And that's just part of the obsession, part of being a collector. It's part of, unfortunately, trying to get it all.
I actually don't have any. I've never had a Grail, but the pieces that have always come up for me once, and as they've come up for me, they just said that's coming home, and they've been great like that, and I don't really put that on myself when I go out there. But what's really most exciting to me when I go out there, what I'm really looking for, in terms of my Grail, is the information. And so when you find that stuff out there, when you're describing, I wrote an article also, again on the SWCA pun. We're just gonna talk about the archive all day. But when I wrote this article on the SWCA on mini catalogs, and what was fun was when I was collecting all the different Kenner mini catalogs that came with all the different toys throughout the world. And I was able to categorize them and find 100 different catalogs. And we all loved those, and we all looked at them, and we all enjoyed them when we were kids. And those are the books that we dreamed about, getting everything and checking them off. And there are so many variations. And just like a good collectible, like Todd said, you need ones that are hard to get, or like grails, and you need ones that are very easy. And you can start a hobby like that and collect them for $3 each, or for $5 each, or find a German-based one for like $100 each, or a Palatoy one, or one from a Harbert line. And so those are really cool, and it's also something nobody else is looking at. So they just keep coming up, and you don't have 1,000 people looking for the same piece, and you lose that competition. It's a lot of fun that way. And then you get to describe it. Once you've put together a whole group, you get to come up to either a panel or write something down, or tell your friends, "Hey, look at this stuff," and it's like this whole new fun thing.
Any other questions? Okay.